Good to be back tonight. Good to see you. I hope you're planning to stay. If you're interested in the Lads to Leaders process, I look forward to tonight. We were talking about it this morning, and one of the kids said, "Already?" And it's like, didn't we just do that? And the answer is yes, and it's time to do it again. It's amazing how fast time flies. We're actually getting started a little later this year than we did last year, so got some things to go over quickly and to try to get us started and back in gear for Lads to Leaders and that process. And so if you are a child that's interested, or a parent or a grandparent, or anybody that wants to be a supporter, a mentor, I encourage you to stay for a brief informational meeting after services tonight, and then we'll have some finger foods after that and let the kids sign up for some stuff and things like that. Let's start in Ephesians chapter 6 tonight. Can we do that? I thought, wow, this is working out perfect. We planned the Lads to Leaders kickoff, and then our topic for tonight is children's role in the home. And so I thought, man, that almost looks like I planned it that way. I really didn't. It just kind of worked out that way. So we're talking about the home. We're talking about the single most basic unit of society. But it's also the single most basic unit of the church. And it's also the most single basic unit of a nation. And so thus, as the home goes, so goes the church. So goes the nation. And so we've been trying to break this down and look at it in its various forms and its various roles within the home. And so we looked at the role of the male in the home, be it a husband, be it a father, perhaps both. And we looked at the role of the female in the home, be it a wife or a mother or perhaps both. And so tonight we want to talk about the children's role in the home. Now, let me be very clear as we start tonight. We are talking about the home, and we are talking about that unit. And so kiddos, I'm talking to you, okay? I am specifically talking to you within your home. But now those of us that are older, we're still children, aren't we? It doesn't matter how old I get, I will always be the child of Rodney and Kathy Livingston. That will never change. It doesn't matter if they're alive, which they are, and I'm very thankful, or if they're not alive. Your parents may not be alive. You're still their child. You always will be, no matter how old you get and no matter whether they're alive or dead. You'll always be their child. And so tonight I want you to think broadly with me, not just in the sense of here's who I need to be while I'm at home growing up. That's important. And we got a lot of young people tonight, a lot of you back from Rush and probably running low on sleep, but stay with me for just a little while here, okay? Stay with me because it is important. You have a role to play in the home. And children have a very positive or a very negative impact on a home. Now, not to take anything away from mother, father, husband, wife, because they're in the position of leadership and authority, but children can make the home a much better place, or right the opposite. They can make it a very dreadful place. And so I want to talk to the kids in homes, but I also want you to realize that the things we're going to discuss tonight will not change no matter what your age is. So the Bible says in Ephesians 6 and verse 1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, verse 2. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. And so you go back to the book of Exodus, in Exodus 20 and verse 12. It's actually the fifth commandment among the 10 commandments, but the fifth commandment is honor your father and mother. Why? That it may go well with you and that your days may be long upon the earth. It is the first commandment with a promise, with a side bonus or a side effect. God says, if you honor your parents. You see, the role of children boils down to one simple point. That's all you got to get tonight. Honor your father and mother. That's it. You honor your father and your mother. And again, it doesn't matter whether they're alive or not, or whether you still live in their home or not. You honor your father and your mother. And as a child, you set out for the entirety of your life to be honoring to your father and your mother. That's the 5th commandment of the 10, but the first with a promise that your days may be well and that they may be long upon the earth. So how do you honor your father and your mother? Let me give you 5 things. There's more, but let me give you 5 things for time's sake, and let me try to get you out a little bit early, okay? Number 1, you obey them. You obey them. Now, we know what that looks like in the home setting, right? So, like, drop down to verse 4 there. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger or wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And so there's a discipline, there's a nurturing, there's a teaching, there's a guiding. And so parents make rules in the home setting. And it's easy as a child not to like the rules. It's even easy as a child to want to be rebellious against the rules. That's not honoring father and mother. It's very disrespectful. It's very dishonoring. You see, we start by obeying. But now go back to verse 1. There is a caveat here. In the Lord. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. We honor God first and foremost. So I'm not asking you to do anything ungodly if your parents ask you to do something that's wrong. There's where we draw the line. We're going to obey God first and foremost. But as long as our parents are within the parameters of what God has set forth, then in order to honor them, we must obey them. And when we disobey, we disrespect, and we're not showing honor to our parents. And I think about that as a 35-year-old. You know, my daddy's not going to whip me anymore, although he probably wants to sometimes. My daddy's not going to take away my truck keys, although he might like to sometimes and might need to. He's not going to take away my phone and ground me from my TV. But yet I still think about the power that I have to honor my father by still obeying and being respectful of him. Just because I'm an adult and I live in my own home and I run my own house now does not give me permission to just say, well, Dad, whatever you say doesn't matter. Now, I have to make my own decisions and I have to live with my own consequences. My dad doesn't do that anymore. As a child growing up, when I was at home, my dad did have to live with that. And he does have to give an account for that. When he set a rule, if I didn't obey it, then he had an obligation to punish me. And if he didn't, then he's accountable for that. But now, where we are in life, and where many of you are, Dad sets forth advice and counsel. I'm not going to be punished if I don't take it or do what he wants me to do. But in the same way, if I can be obedient to him, even as an adult, think about how honorable that is in the eyes of my parents. And so you, if your parents are no longer living, as you think about what they taught you, and maybe you've even said to yourself, you know, my parents would be proud of me. And good for you. I hope they would be. And you're still honoring them. Though they be dead and gone from this earth, you're still honoring them because you're still obeying them and you're still following the principles that are in the Lord that they set forth. You go back to the book of Proverbs. The Proverbs is full of passages, isn't it? Go back to the 10th chapter of the book of Proverbs. I don't know how many I could pull out of here, but there's a bunch of them. Look at verse 1 of Proverbs 10. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. Now think about, where's the age in that? Where's the limitation in that? You see, I'm still thinking that if I act wisely in obedience, I still can honor my father, even as an adult. A wise son makes his father glad. In the same way, if I, even as an adult, disobey and act foolishly, then I bring sorrow even upon my parents. Are they accountable? No. I understand Ezekiel 18. I'm not denying that. My parents are not accountable for me at this point. Make that clear. But you got to believe that I still have the power in obedience to honor my parents, or in disobedience to bring sorrow. You think my parents enjoy watching me be disobedient? Even at my age? I don't think so. I think it hurts them when they see that happening. I think it hurts them because they know it hurts me, but then it hurts them because they know they taught me better. And they desire for me to be obedient all of my life. And so if I'm going to honor my father and mother, let me suggest in the first place we obey them. But then secondly, let me suggest that we listen to them. Now, again, as a child in the home, it's easy to get selective hearing, isn't it? My mother was a lecturer. My mother liked to talk kind of like her oldest son. But anyway, my mother was a lecturer. And so we got cute and got smart alecky when my brother and I got a little older. And so we just decided we would number Mama's lectures. And so when Mama would get mad at us, we would just say, okay, which number is this? Right? Like, don't talk, don't give us the lecture, just tell us what number it is, and then we'll remind ourselves what the lecture is about. You know, very, very smart alecky, very terrible decision on our part. Okay? Daddy didn't like it at all. The point is, we didn't want to listen. Because oftentimes when you're not behaving yourself properly, the last thing you want is somebody telling you you're not behaving yourself properly. Guess what? When you get 35, that doesn't change. When I'm misbehaving, I still don't want my parents telling me that I'm doing wrong. I still don't like to listen, even though I need to be listening. If I'm going to be honoring to them, I may not agree with everything they say. I may not oblige everything they say, but I do believe that even as an adult, I owe it to my parents to listen. To listen to what they have to say. When you go back to the book of Proverbs, go to the first chapter, verse 8, Proverbs 1 and verse 8. Hear, my son, your father's instructions, and forsake not your mother's teaching. Again, I'm asking, what age is this boy? Well, I kind of believe that this boy is a young adult, if you want to know the truth. And his father's talking to him as a young adult. Hear, my son. In other words, when I get 18, kiddos, I don't have to listen to my parents anymore. That's terrible, terrible thinking. Don't ever think like that. You want to always listen to your parents so that you can honor them, even not only as a child growing up, but listen to what they have to say as an adult. We can truly honor our father and mother by listening. You come over to chapter 4, the Proverbs is just full, verse 1. Hear, O son, a father's instruction, and be attentive. For what purpose? That you might gain wisdom or insight. Listen, be attentive. Chapter 5, verse 1. My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Give your ear, incline your ear to my understanding. And then did you hear what Barry read from chapter 6, beginning in verse 20? Verse 21, bind them on your heart always. That is, your father's commandments and your mother's teaching. When you walk, verse 22, they'll lead you. And when you lie down, they'll watch you. And when you awake, they'll speak to you. What will? Your father's commandments and your mother's instructions. Listen. Even after they're no longer in this world, they'll still speak to you. I don't mean in a dream miraculously. I just mean that you'll come to a crossroads and you'll say, you know what, I faced this situation a while ago and I remember what my daddy said then. It might be that back then you didn't listen and your daddy may be dead and gone now. You might ought to listen this time. He's not still here to speak to you directly, but he is speaking. Because in your mind, in your heart, you go back to that occasion and you can honor them by listening to their instruction, to their wisdom. I really believe, and I may be wrong, but it's my opinion that we're losing the desire as young people to go sit and talk to old folks. And that troubles me. It troubles me because there's a lot of wisdom in this room, be it your parents or grandparents or be it somebody else's parents or grandparents. And you remember what happened in Judges chapter 2, don't you? A generation grew up that didn't know the commandments of the Lord. You remember what happened? By Judges 21, everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. Why? Because they wasn't listening to the previous generation or previous 2 generations. And now we've got 4 or 5 generations because people are living longer. And so we've got several generations. Kiddos, listen to these older folks. Listen to what they have to say. Take it to heart. Who knows what wisdom you may gain, what insight might carry you on down the road. Number 3, if we're going to honor our parents, I believe that we can honor them by living right. By living right. When you go to like Proverbs 19 and verse 13, for example. Proverbs 19 and verse 13. A foolish son is ruin to his father. And again, I ask the question, at what point, at what time frame can I still be a bad influence upon my father? Can I still live in such a way that would be deemed as foolish? Turn over to the 22nd chapter, and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I understand that's a rule and there are exceptions to the rule. It's a proverb and there are exceptions to the proverb. But the point is that if I was trained to do right, then I need to do right. And I need to live right. And oh, by the way, there's incentives for living right. Did you hear what he said? Honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you and that your days may be long on the earth. There's incentives for living right. It's the first commandment with a promise. You back up to Proverbs 3, and we won't for time's sake, but there's a couple of verses there, verse 1 and 2 of Proverbs 3, that talk about living life wisely and how it pays great dividends to have peace and prosperity upon the earth. And again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but that's the rule. There's always that kid out there that's honoring their father and mother and that loses their life in a tragic accident. That's an exception to the rule. The rule is if you honor your father and mother, it'll go well and your days will be long upon the earth. So how do you do that? By living right, by doing right. In so doing, you honor your father and your mother. And then we always ask the question, okay, the proverb says, train up a child in the way they're to go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. So what happens why do some depart from it? And the only answer that I have tonight is, I'm reminded of what the psalmist said in Psalm 127 in verse 4. Like hands, like arrows in the hands of a mighty warrior, so are the days of one's youth. So are the youth of one's days. So are the time of fatherhood with the arrows in the quiver. like arrows in the hand of a mighty warrior. But what do we know that the warrior does with those arrows? He shoots them. And when he turns them loose, guess what? They encounter all kinds of obstacles. There's wind. There's all kinds of things that push and blow and there's elevation changes. You ever shot a bow and arrow? If you haven't, I don't advise you to just go out there and start slinging arrows. You're going to lose a bunch of them. I got Larry Killen's crossbow one time. I never shot a crossbow in my life. I'm not sure how many arrows I owe David, but I owe him several. I found one in my garden last year while I was tilling it up. Don't go slinging arrows if you don't know what you're doing. You got to know what you're doing. There's so many variables that are out there. And when you turn them loose, as long as they're in the bow, you got full control. I mean, you can stop, start, let go, put it up, change it, up, down, pull harder. When you turn her loose, she's susceptible to all the things of the world. And that's what happens sometimes is when we turn those arrows loose, they don't withstand the variables that are out there. And some of them do get lost. And we find some later, and some we don't. It's just the reality of the proverb. You train up a child as best you can with your imperfections, because none of us are perfect. And when they're old, the proverb says, when they're old, they will not depart from it. And that is always the prayer. That is always the desire. That they would live right and do right. And in so doing, you honor your parents. Whether they're alive or whether they're dead, you still can honor them by living right. A fourth thing I would suggest to you that you can do to honor your parents is to care for them in their aged condition. To care for them in their aged condition. When you come over to the 23rd chapter of the book of Proverbs, I almost got ahead of myself, in verse 22. Proverbs 23 and verse 22. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is aged, when she is older. You know, the Bible says in 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8, that if a man will not provide for his own, he's worse than an unbeliever. And we typically come to that verse and we say, you know what? Fathers, husbands, you need to be working. And you need to be providing for your family. And I'm okay with that. I think that's still accurate. I think that's what Paul is teaching to Timothy and those younger men, is that they need to be providing for their families. But doesn't provision also include care? Taking care of, not just going out and earning a living and bringing home money so that they can buy groceries to eat, but also being there to fulfill the needs that arise. A man that won't take care of his own is worse than an unbeliever, and I would suggest to you that includes aged parents. If a child won't take care of their aged parents, something's not honorable about that situation. Now, I understand there's circumstances and there's health problems that force you to have to get help, and there are means out there. I understand you cannot do it all by yourself sometimes. I have zero medical training. I don't know nothing. And so I'm going to have some help. But if the Lord will grant me the strength and the health to be well enough to take care of my parents, I intend to see that they are cared for. Whatever means that is, whatever I have to pay to make that happen, because I want to honor them that way. And I do believe that is very honorable, and that is providing. Just because that passage is used in the context of the home setting, and it may be that some of you have brought your parents into your home and cared for them. And I know that's a strain and that's a stress and it's difficult, but you're honoring your parents. And I want to be honorable to my parents. And I hope you will. And even when life takes its course and nature does its thing, and we lose those parents. We can rest assured that we honored them by doing the best we knew how, as long as we could. And when we couldn't, we found somebody who could. That's honorable. And I unfortunately, I'm seeing some older parents get thrown to the wayside, and it hurts me. It hurts me badly, because I think about what my parents have done for me. I think it was Angela that said the other day, one of her kids told her she owed them $3, and she told her kid, "Well, you owe me $20,000, right?" If I've misquoted Angela there, I'm sorry, but I think it was Angela. The point is, as parents, we do a lot for our kids, right? And the time comes as a child when we may have to pay some of that back, not in monetary, but in caring for them and being there for them. And I think that's very honorable, and I want to encourage you, if you're not, if you have the chance, maybe you don't have the chance to honor your parents that way anymore, but I hope you will. Provide for them even in their aged condition. And then finally, I said there was 5. There's probably 8 or 10, but here's my 5. And the 5th one is to build a joyful home. Now, I think you expected me to say, well, if you're going to be honoring your father and mother, here's what you need to do. You need to obey them. I think you expected that. That's what God wants, right? I kind of think you expected me to say, if you want to be honorable to your parents, you need to listen to them. I mean, take advice from them, take counsel, use their wisdom to your advantage. You might have even expected me to say something like, you need to live right or do right or live in a pleasing fashion so that they'll be honored by it, and act wisely in how you live so that they're not offended or so that their name is not tarnished by how you're living your life. You might have even expected me to say something about caring for them, even in an aged condition. But I got to thinking, I truly believe my parents are being honored tonight by my joyful home. I really believe that, and understand that real joy is about having your priorities in the right place. Real joy is about understanding what really matters in life. Real joy is about being in harmony and being unified together. Real joy is about serving the Lord and putting Him first. Real joy is about watching kids mature spiritually, and I just got to believe that my parents are enjoying seeing that process. Now, you grandparents, you can either agree or disagree. I don't know. But as I stand here anticipating the day when my kids will make homes for themselves, I just got to believe that what I want more than anything from my children is that their homes be filled with real joy. Not happiness, joy. The deep hope and anchor that is only found in the Lord. Listen to Proverbs 23 and verse 24. The father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who fathers a wise son will be glad. Let your father, verse 25, and mother be glad. Let her who bore you rejoice. I just believe that we can honor our father and mother by building our home on the right foundation. By striving to make our home what it is that God wants it to be. And I believe that a parent who has any salt about them will look at their children, and when their children are doing well in the Lord, that will be honoring to them. That'll be joyful for them. Not only will they enjoy having the grandkids and all of that, but they'll enjoy the fact that their grandkids we got a lot of grandparents raising grandkids today, don't we? I just can't believe that. I know grandparents, I know you'll do whatever's necessary because that's just who you are. You'll do whatever's necessary, but I can't believe for a moment that you believe that that's the ideal situation. It has to happen sometimes, and I get it. But I honestly believe that what grandparents really want is they want to see their children doing well with their own family. They want to see their children's marriages strong and alive and doing well. They want to see their grandchildren growing up, being taught what is right and wrong, and being taught the values and the characteristics of what makes a God-fearing adult in time to come. I just believe that when that is the case and we're building that is just another way in which we can honor our father and mother. The role of children in the home, that's pretty simple. Children, honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you and that your days may be long on the earth. This is the first commandment with a promise. The Lord made a bunch of promises, didn't he? That's the first one that he made. Do you know what happened in the Old Testament to rebellious children? Have I ever told you that story? I can't even fathom to read it, okay? Let me challenge you to go read it. It's found in Deuteronomy 21. It's found in verses 18 through 21. Let me tell you what happened to a rebellious child. I'll just tell you in my own words because it's pretty graphic in there. They were stoned to death. That's what happened. It's pretty simple. In the Old Testament, God didn't put up with children that didn't honor their father and mother. I can't believe tonight that God's very happy with children who are not honoring their father and mother now. It may be that the punishments have changed. It may be that God is more merciful and more gracious. I don't know. But I don't believe he's changed his mind on what he wants from children. And that is to honor their father and mother. And so I'm begging you, every one of us in this building, we may not be a father or a husband. We may not be a mother or a wife, but you are a child. You are the child of somebody. And my prayer is your life tonight is first and foremost honoring God by seeking to honor your parents in the ways that we've talked about in the Lord, according to what the Lord desires. If not tonight, why would you keep waiting to be the child that God wants you to be? Decide tonight, I'm going to do better and be better. And if we can help you with that, would you come right now as we stand and sing?